Hello everyone, welcome to Me versus the Internet, the show where we talk about the biggest questions in songwriting. Today's question is, the one mindset that changed it all. Not really a question, but a statement that has a question mark at the end of it, so same thing. Let's go through your comments and see what you've answered. The artist has a trash bin full of rejected ideas while the procrastinator has nothing. The only way to fill a blank page is to write, and some of your ideas are going to suck at first, but that's how you become a better songwriter. Don't fear failure. It's a very good point, I think, for any creative person. Getting over that initial fear or that general fear of failure is one of the most important things that you can do. Once you remove that, then it's pure creativity and you can really let yourself explore all these different realms that you couldn't before. Next, we have a comment by Peak of the Element, and this is probably my favorite one of the bunch. So he says, the mindset that has helped me is if you had to bet between two people who had to hit a bullseye, where one claims to be a master at darts but only has one dart to throw, and the other has never thrown darts but has an unlimited amount of darts, you would likely bet on the one who has unlimited chances. So give yourself all the chances you want, and don't ever limit yourself like your next song has to be the bullseye. I remember being on a masterclass given by Conrad Pope, the orchestrator who orchestrated such movies as Star Wars, the latest Hobbit movies, and he's one of the biggest orchestrators out there in the world. And someone asked, how many chances do you actually have? How many times can you screw up before you really have to give up your job? And he said, thousands, infinite chances. You can always recover from anything you've done in the past. No one is going to care unless it's something like maybe you're a racist or something like that. It might be a different thing in this industry for sure, which is a good thing. But there's almost nothing, there's almost no failure that you couldn't recover from. And that's something I found really inspiring. And it kind of reminds me of this as well. If you have unlimited chances in life, that kind of gives you a different kind of perspective, right? Not everything has to be perfect. Just keep doing your shit and keep focusing on producing great stuff. And if there's a stinker among those, that's just going to happen. You're not going to write only hit songs. That's just not how it's going to be, even if you've done this for 20, 50 years. So don't worry about that so much. Just keep writing, keep making great music, and everything will be fine. Lisa Joseph writes, forcing and trying to write when my mind was blank only made things worse. I was surely writing songs, but they weren't good, nor did they really capture an emotion or event. It was only when I let go that I could get back. Sometimes I run out of inspiration, but instead of stressing out over it, I just let it be and go on with life, and something along the way will spark an idea. It's kind of how I work as well. We'll see some different examples of this as well. But for me, the easiest thing to do is take a couple of days off if I'm not feeling like writing, gather some ideas, find inspiration then, and then when I get back, I'll usually have a whole slew of ideas that I can just work through. Keith Empire says, this seems very small, but for me, the biggest transformation came from working every day. Taking one day off can lead to 2 days off, then 3. So even if it's only a small amount of work on any given day, that consistency leads to an enormous amount of work at the end of the year. It's also a very good point. Consistency really is key. It's that macro kind of big picture work. I don't really think in terms of what am I going to do today. I think more in terms of what do I want to have done at the end of the month. So I'm thinking ahead. So at the end of the month, I want this and this and that to be done. So what do I have to do today to make sure that becomes a reality? That's how I like to think about planning. I don't really like to think plan through the minutiae of every day, because I find that really gets me very stressed and makes me nervous. And it's also not very fun because you don't really see the big picture. And working on a bigger project becomes very, very difficult because it just doesn't become so fun if you already have the end picture in mind. That just makes the whole project a little bit easier to work on, I've found. So great comment. Thanks, Keith Empire, for sharing. Next is a comment by Shussle. Shussle? I don't know. The thing I learned that changed me the most was realizing that everybody looks for different things in an artist. Some look for great vocals, others for flawless choreography, others for amazing songwriting or stunning visuals. This was very liberating because it means I can't ever please everyone. I should just pick the characteristics I look for in an artist and try to work on those, with the others being secondary. When I was a teenager, an album came out that floored me so much that I almost stopped writing because I thought, I can never write as well as this. This is just the best thing I've ever heard. How could I ever make something like this? What's the point in even trying? And so being the person that I was, thinking hyperboles, everything had to be the best, obviously. So I thought, like, what I did was I listened to a couple of my favorite artists, who I considered the best artists in the world back then, of course, and compared them in terms of like what they gave to me emotionally. And so I listened to the first artist and like, oh, well, this is clearly the best of them all. Listened to the second one, thought the same thing. Third one, fourth one, thought the same thing. All of them seemed to be the best, and all of them gave me something that I was like, wow, this is so exciting. This has got to be the coolest artist in the entire world. And so at the end of the day, I was like, well, how can that be? How can 5 different artists be the best artist in the world? There can only be one best, right? And what I figured out then as a teenager was that you can, the trick to becoming the best, if you will, and the best here means a great artist who you want to share with your friends and, help by buying their albums or merchandise or whatever. The way you can become that best artist for someone is by becoming your best self. If you think about yourself in competition to other artists, you are going to fail. What you really have to do is you're going to think about how to make yourself the best version of yourself, how you can create something that is truly unique and you won't ever have to compete with anyone else. Again, competition is something I'm highly against. I really think competition is a thing of like the 90s and earlier, where we really had to compete for space in very limited platforms. Now with the internet, everyone has the same right for space, for being looked at, and now it's all about finding your niche. So that's what I think it's really about today. It's not about looking at others and trying to figure out how you can be just as good as them or trying to like best them in whatever genre you're in. It's really about finding your own genre, defining your own subgenre of music and becoming the very best at that. And then you can truly become the best in someone else's eyes. Next, we have a comment by Zach Rowe who says, the mindset that helped me was to just create without judgment. When we create something and judge it before it's done, we halt any further growth and development. Do you think your lyrics are lacking? Keep writing them anyways. You might find the right context for them another time, but you won't find that context if you judge them before they're done. Absolutely agree. I've talked about this many times before, but there are 2 sides to creating. There's the creative part and the logical part where you dissect what you've done, and it's really vital to separate those 2. And the easiest way I've found to do that would be to be tired. Like I like to work at night because that's when my logical mind is almost asleep already because I've been working hard the entire day. That logical part of your brain can really get tired because of that. I find the creative part of yourself doesn't ever really get tired. And so working when I'm tired usually works really well for me. Other people like to use drugs or alcohol or stuff like that. Something I personally don't do. But and I'm not recommending it here by any means, but whatever works for you. If it's a legal drug, why not? If it relaxes you and it takes the logical part out of the equation for you, then fine. Just don't overdo it, obviously. All right. Next, we have a comment by Mikael Elkan who says, "Practice slow, learn fast. The first thing you do will never be the finished song." Great comment. Thanks for sharing. Like a Fire says, "The most important thing I learned is to force myself to finish things and shut down the inner critic. That means I finish songs I write and albums and songs I record." Again, really great comment. I completely agree. Again, it's about these 2 halves. Make sure you stay creative when you want to be creative, and you dissect what you're doing when you want to critique yourself. Izzy says, "Most important thing I realized is that creativity and writing good songs is not some magical thing that you have to pray you'll somehow find. It's about being disciplined and not settling." Yeah, so this was actually one of the things I learned when I started studying music production, was that really the secret to it all is just patience and forcing yourself to just find the right sound. In production, a lot of it is just about finding the right sounding instrument. And sometimes, I have probably over 10,000 different sounding synthesizers on my computer, or like presets that I could use as a starting point. So that means billions of different sounds that I could potentially use. And before I studied music, I thought like, there's got to be some trick to this. Someone needs to teach me how to do this. And when I studied, I thought I was going to learn those tricks. Well, that didn't happen. And so I realized it comes down to what I do. If I want to improve as a producer, I'll have to do that myself. And what I did was, the way I improved as a producer was to just sit there and try until I found the right sound. And that might take me 4 hours instead of 10 minutes. But eventually what happened was I got into that deep learning. It's not a surface thing anymore for me. I can understand what kind of sound I'm looking for, and that makes things a lot easier for me. And I think that's the only way that you're actually going to improve as a producer or songwriter, is by really going through it. In the beginning especially, it's going to get less and less and less. Like now I'm spending maybe half an hour to an hour finding the right sound because I know what I'm looking for more than I did back then. But in the beginning, you really have to go through it. And sometimes it's as much as 10 hours just finding that right bass drum sound, So that's just how it is. It's about being disciplined and not settling for anything less than perfect. All right. Thanks, Izzy, for sharing. Moving on to Zetha's comment, who says, I had a lot of trouble comparing myself to others and setting myself unrealistic expectations. I had to struggle for so long until I decided to create what sounds good to me and what I have fun doing. It all circles back to having fun, which I think is the number one motivator. Completely agree with this. Having fun is so important. When you're stressed or when you feel like you have a writer's block or something like that in your writing process, the one thing I always come back to is a quote I heard first from Tim Ferriss, who says, how would this feel if it were easy? What would I do if this were comfortable? And that's a huge motivator for me. Whenever I'm thinking, this is so stressful, or how can I do this on time, or I'm just really not enjoying myself here, I'm really trying to take myself out of the equation, saying hey, what's happening here? Why am I being so stressed right now? Why am I not having fun? And what's a thing that I could change so that this becomes more fun? And, there's different motivating platforms on the internet. There's even a website that I used for a while where you can build your own RPG character. And if you fulfill your tasks that you have set yourself for the day, then you can level up your character and stuff like that and fight monsters, which are big tasks and stuff. So it's just fun, like a gamification element, adding a gamification element to your tasks can be a way to do that. It really comes down to what motivates you in life. If you find that you're a gamer, which I kind of am at heart, I guess, that stuff might really work for you. For others, it might be just making a plan for the entire week, which is something that doesn't work so well for me. But finding a way to make things more fun for yourself, I think, is ultimately the best way to become more productive and to have obviously more fun working on your projects. And I think it's going to make your music sound better as well. Next, we have a comment by Jay Pellerojo, who says, when it comes to lyrics, I think the best thing is to be able to open your soul 100%. A glass of wine sure helps me a lot getting some of my own censorship out of the way. Again, for some people, it might be drugs like alcohol or cigarettes or marijuana or something like that. For me, it's sleep. But yeah, I completely agree. Getting your critical voice in your head out of the equation is always a great thing when you're writing music. Martin Tilla, humility and the understanding of success in personal rather than public or monetary sense. Yes, I completely agree. Humility obviously is super important if you want to work with other people, which in the music industry you are going to do. And understanding that a true success in life is usually personal rather than public or in a monetary sense, financially. If you can work on yourself, that's always more valuable than making more money, essentially. And that's hard to understand when you're just starting out, when money is really tight and you're fighting for survival. But if you can work on yourself first, that's something that you're gonna profit from for the rest of your life. That's your engine that you're building that you can run off of your entire life. If you have a little bit of money now, that's something you're gonna spend and it's gonna be gone. So working on your inner game is hugely important. And that's why, I've started this new series, Pulling the Lever, which is all about inner game and understanding success and understanding yourself as a person a little bit better. So thanks, Martin, for this great comment. I completely agree with it. Panda Musk says, have the means at hand to easily and conveniently write down, dictate, sing, hum, drum, ideas into a notepad, recorder app, whatever, at all times. Have a habit to write them down or record them right away when they come, even small ones that you don't know what to do with yet. You have a bank of good puzzle pieces and will never have to force writing again. Completely agree. I record everything into my phone. I even have a tape recorder for while I'm here at my working desk because I don't really have a cell phone here when I'm working, just because it can really distract me when Facebook pops up on my screen or something. So I like the tape recorder just because it's so analog and simple that it doesn't distract me. But yes, completely agree. Write down any good idea that you have, dictate, sing, hum, drum, as you said. It's perfect. That's the best way to do it, so that when you actually start writing, you won't have, you won't ever feel pressured or something like that, because you'll always have ideas that you can work with already. Fabulous Nian says, so the idea that changed the way I approach art is nothing an art is truly original. Everything is a combination of ideas that came before, gave me confidence in stealing melodies, bass lines, melodic structures, and just confidence in writing music. And that's actually great advice. You can, things like melodic structures or even structures in general of songs, harmonic structures, or harmony are things that can't be copyrighted. Bass lines and melodies can, so be a little bit careful with those. So stealing a structure from another song that has already been successful and applying that to your own song is great. You can totally do that, and it might make the whole process a little bit easier. HECO says, I'm over 40, and when I look back, the best time in my life, the stuff that sticks out are the moments I spent writing and playing music with my band. In the past, I thought if I'm successful with my music, people would eventually love me. Now I make music because I love it, and I'm successful as long as I can make time for it. Great comment. Thanks for sharing. I really agree. I think most of us started because we wanted to impress someone that isn't us. And I think the ones that stick with it eventually are the ones that just really, truly love making music, that really love the experience of holding your CD at the end of the day, or being able to listen to your track that you've been writing and thinking like, wow, this is so cool and I made this. And it's a great, great feeling. Also one that can be very deceiving because it can lead you to release something that you think is great, but because it has your voice in it, but others don't really like so much. So it can happen, but it's a great experience. It's one of the best things in the world to be able to create something. And at the end of the day, you're holding something in your very own hands that you created. It's a fantastic feeling. So completely agree with this. Thanks, Seiko, for sharing. Endora says, working smart and efficiently over working hard and nonstop. Music comes naturally. Marketing should be something that should be focused on more for me. Man, this is such a great point, and this is definitely one of the biggest insights I had as well. Working smart over working hard. In the beginning, I think it's almost necessary to work hard because you don't exactly know what working smart means unless you've gone through it all and you realize like, oh, you know what, this I could have done without, or that was really important. I should do more of that in the future. But absolutely agree with this. At some point in your life, and that's right around that point when you should be pulling the lever, coming back to my other show here on this channel, that's when you should really be thinking about like, okay, so what are the things that I'm already doing? Can I live without? And which things should I focus on more to have more success in my life? And success in your life doesn't necessarily mean just financially, but emotionally, socially, and stuff like that. Next, we have a comment by Kritika who says, I guess I was trying too hard to make something different at the beginning. Everything changed for me when I realized that music's not about proving yourself. It can be 4 chords, single note melody, or something you have never tried before. Kind of similar as the comment before. It's not about proving yourself. It's not about being loved by someone else. It's really about figuring out how you can make a song that really truly speaks to you, that makes you love yourself, right? Sounds very very zen at this point, but that's actually what it comes down to. Like, if music makes you happy, it also has the added benefit that it's going to make other people happy. I can almost guarantee that. The Colonies writes, my mindset is write what makes you excited. Don't change your style to be more accepted by the mainstream. I completely agree. Listening to, by the way, commercial writers and producers, I've also found that to be true. The only things that they really look for are that the sounds are recent, that the sounds sound like now. That's mostly it, actually. In terms of the songwriting and stuff like that, no one really ever makes compromises. No one ever says like, you know what, we should change that melody and turn it into something that's less good just because that's what people want to hear right now. That's never really happened in any session that I've been a part of, at least. Typically, it's just about saying like, you know what, I think we can make this simpler. And in that case, that means just make this better, more memorable. And typically, everyone likes the melody better after it has been changed in those cases. So I completely agree with this, and I think most industry professionals here would also agree. And yeah, good point. Thanks. Matthew Taylor says, I don't listen to jazz, and frankly, I don't particularly like jazz, but I understood that I need to study jazz. That was a thought that finally turned to action, and when it did, the floodgates opened. That's great for you. I also studied jazz for 2 years. It also did a lot for me, although I didn't have a very good time doing it, so I'm not sure whether that really was such a good decision. I think what it comes down to is if you like jazz or if you're really interested in jazz, same as with classical music, by the way, then you should study it and figure out what it is that you like about it. As with anything, if you like something in music, then you should always try and figure out what it is that you like in particular so you can do it yourself. All right? Next, we have a comment by Alex Clipper who says the right note is always just one fret away. And that is certainly true in all commercial music. In jazz music, things might be a little bit different. I've been in quite a couple of situations where I was improvising, and the trick is when you play a wrong note, something that initially sounds wrong, you play it again and you phrase around it to make that note work with the harmonical context. So it's not always like that. It's not that there is something like wrong notes. You can make anything sound right. But if we're talking about commercial music, I think you're absolutely right. It's always just one fret or one key on the piano away. And that brings us to the end of the video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, and leave a comment in the comments. Leave a comment in the comments if you have anything more to add to it. Stay fairly, everyone. Cheers.